Guru Nation, welcome to a very special episode. I was like dreaming how this episode's gonna work out. I had no idea it's gonna be Zymewire, Pete Bastedo, and Scott Ballinger. So Pete is the co-founder, and Scott is the global head of sales for Zymewire. They had a really good webinar that kind of inspired this interview. Which we'll put link underneath the show note for you can go see the entire webinar. We're not going to recreate it right now. This is just conversation. But Zymewire has been supporting Guru Nation since 2010. Pete, I remember when were one of the first Guru Nation producers, right? And back in
That's right.
2010. So it really gave me confidence, like, wow, other people in the industry actually care enough to like want to support. So thank you for that. First of all, it gave me a lot of confidence. I don't think actually they ever thanked you for that. So thank you for being one of the first like true supporters of the show.
Do you
That's
remember the offer? Do you remember the offer you had?
Yeah, it
It was
was like
like a hundred
$100 for a
bucks for
lifetime.
lifetime. Yeah,
And
which which
your guys' link is still on the Clinical Trials Guru. So whatever SEO help that gets, there it
I
is.
took it as $100, and like $50 would go towards a tattoo that you would put on your chest or something, right? For these advertisements. So
Well, let's
that's
see
permanent.
what's better ROI for you, $100 in Bitcoin at that time or Guru Nation. Well, actually, Bitcoin, yeah, Bitcoin would have been out.
Yeah, big. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
It would have been
those
tough to
conferences.
get Bitcoin though back then. It wasn't that easy. You can't just go to Coinbase and buy Bitcoin. You had to like know how to program and stuff. So either way, Guru Nation not a bad investment. I think we'll get you some. Hopefully, get some SEO to Zymewire's way. But you guys have been doing really good, and I mean, I guess we can talk about Zymewire and kind of where you guys are. Who your target audience is, how you're trying to help side CROs and beyond. Um, and then I guess we can talk a little bit about some practical things I think are beneficial for the sites and potential job seekers or independent contractors, solopreneurs in the space. There's a lot of solopreneurs in the space, not to mention vendors, the tech vendors. I mean, that's like a huge growing segment. I read an
Sure.
article, I think it was before the pandemic, so it's probably even bigger now. But pre-pandemic, it was like by 2030, the projection was that 65% of all revenues in clinical research are going to be from vendors. Like vendors will receive these revenue. That's amazing. Like,
I
and they're
believe
not
it.
including sites or CROs, just vendors like tech vendors.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's maybe we can talk about that. But why don't you guys just introduce yourselves, maybe one at a time, just so the audience can get to know you guys.
Pete, you want to take it off?
Sure. So as yeah, thanks for the intro, Dan. I'm Pete, one of the co-founders of the company. So there were two of us. It's interesting. You're 2010. I think we did that investment like even before really officially starting the company in a way. But we just sent these out to the team. So I'll hold this up. This came yesterday in the mail, and we did this for a kind of so every employee will get one of these. And so here's mine, and it starts with
Love
the
this.
name, and then there's a Lego brick for every year that you've been at the
Wow,
company. So I thought, I was like, wow. Well.
that's cool.
Look
And
at
then we got to choose our Lego guy at the top. So I have a I have a red phone in the office that the team knows about. It's kind of an old rotary phone I use just as a prop. But anyway, so
Brick by
yeah,
brick.
9+ years we've been doing this for. So there was two of us, and we started the company with the vision of people were using all these databases for information and stale. Everyone hated it, and we started the company thinking, hey, we could probably do this in a much more automated way, and actually make a product that people enjoy using. And so that's really what we started with. And we had 10 companies that we asked them to pay a very small amount to be part of a beta group, kind of like almost like embedded. We embedded ourselves in their team, and we didn't have a product, didn't know what to build. We just knew that we had a bunch of people who didn't like the existing stuff. And what emerged from that was an early product that people, adoption started to increase. And yeah, here we are, many Lego bricks later.
Yeah,
So we
that's
have,
crazy.
yeah, so current, I mean, your Lego stack would be as high as that. So
That's cool. Literally brick by brick, it was built.
yeah. So we currently we have team. The team is about 35 people at the moment, and we have about 340, 350 clients around the world.
Wow. So you guys are going to be one of those vendors I was talking about by
Sure.
Yeah. So
2030.
when you bring up the vendor, the kinds of companies we would help would range from clinical sites. So we've got a number of clinical sites that would make up that, all the way to, so I think we're at about 19 of the top 20 clinical CROs at the moment. We've got most of the top contract manufacturers as well. So lots
Wow.
of people, thousands of individuals around the world that would be uh, that are selling something to pharma, whether that's
Right.
clinical site all the way to some of those big vendors. So
And you know
yeah,
what? That's kind of cool how you guys are getting known, and uh, you're starting to get a lot of traction. Like you really, I've seen your company just evolve over the last decade, and it's a tough business because I'm in kind of the same space with my consulting company. Like we have a really affordable product for sites. Well, it's a service for sites. And unlike other industries, in this industry, like B2B in research, when a site or a CRO really likes your product, they're not sharing it. Like they've told
right.
us we're not sharing, you're our secret weapon. And I know for Zymewire, I know for a fact because I talk to other CRO people out there with small mid-size CROs, and they're like, "Oh, don't tell anybody about
Yeah,
Zymewire."
yeah.
But we're
That's
doing these videos. We don't care about this.
so like to try to get like a client testimonial is like pulling teeth, right? No, I don't want to. No, I'm just gonna keep this to myself. And
I know.
but
So
yeah,
despite
that's
all that, like you've been able to grow the company really well and have a really successful company from what I could see. So congrats.
well, we're having a ton of fun, and yeah, we're nowhere near reaching the vision. So yeah, I'll pass it over to Scott, who joined us in I guess really starting kind of November, December of 2020.
Oh wow. Welcome, Scott. I saw you on the webinar too, and we'll have the link to the webinar underneath, by the way.
Yeah. So thanks, Pete and Dan. Thanks, Dan, for hosting us. So I'm career business development in life sciences, mostly on the clinical CRO side, as Pete said. I joined PPD as a business developer when they had less than 250 employees. So today, 25,000 employees. That was a long, long time ago. But career, my DNA is business development. I discovered Zymewire in 2015. Started help, making sure my teams had the advantage that it provided. And then Pete and I started talking over the pandemic, and I found an opportunity to come and every day get up and help these 350 companies, these thousands of business developers that sell their life science services into biotech or pharma. Every day, that's what we do at Zymewire. And one of the things that brought that webinar about was we looked and we said, we've had 3,000 hours of conversation with our users, these business developers, slogging it out through the pandemic. Let's distill what we're hearing, what their challenges are, what the opportunities are, and put that into a message. And that's what sort of brought us here. But I'm a career BD guy in life sciences, and it's been a ton of fun working with Pete to find that next tier of growth across those tech providers and the other life sciences solutions that are out there for biotechnology companies and pharmaceutical companies.
Wow, Scott, that's a cool story. I didn't really realize that. So yeah, like I've interviewed Pete a few times one-on-one. I should interview you one-on-one because that's quite a story and quite a testimony to Zymewire actually. You use the product, you were a customer, and then you started working with them. Like that doesn't happen that
So,
often.
yeah, Scott and I met kind of around here, right? If you
Yeah.
put it on the Lego.
And all my teams, have always had Zymewire. And, one of the things, like you said, absolutely true. It's a competitive advantage or it's a secret weapon. But the one good thing is when a BD person who's using Zymewire leaves one company and goes to another one, the next thing you know, it blossoms over there because they're like, I'm not taking this job if you don't give me Zymewire.
That's right. That's right. It's like it's viral. but in a good way for Zymewire and for the other CROs. I mean, competition's ultimately a good thing. It brings out the best in all of us. So yeah, we should do like a one-on-one also, Scott. That's an amazing story.
Would love to do that.
So I guess there's different stakeholders here. There's the CROs, there's the sites, and then there's like this new emerging group that I'm started to talk to because of all the biotech companies I'm reviewing now, the job seekers or the solopreneurs. So I guess we can go like in order. I mean, the webinar was more focused on the CROs, right? But um, they obviously use Zymewire. But as far as biz dev is concerned, what are some of the biggest challenges like with biz dev? I mean, I guess Scott, I would ask you because that's like kind of what your career is.
Sure. So, we see Zymewire users spanning clinical, like you said, labs, manufacturing. I think we've got over 45 companies that characterize themselves as e-clinical. Obviously, that was really big during COVID. And then site networks, large and small. It's all of those groups that want to understand and see the signals for where's the next trial coming from and how early do I need to see that signal to be competitive, to get in front of that opportunity. And those are the challenges. Different companies and solutions say, I want to, be in discussions with the sponsor as soon as that protocol starts to germinate, because I need to bake in my solution early on and be part of the design. So it's those early signals that they're looking for. And then sometimes it's, oh, we sell to Novartis and Pfizer and big guys, and others are, no, we really want to target that long tail of biotech. And our services and solutions are tailor-made for them, and there's not as much information available in more traditional sources and services about them. So their focus on how to leverage the tool is in that regard.
I have a quote that I've been throwing around as often as I could, as often as I can on social media this year and a little bit of last year. Small is the new big, and that's what the long tail actually is. The long tail is getting longer, and it's also getting thicker. And that's where a lot of the action is. I mean, yeah, you may not be IQVIA. I own a very small CRO. We do IITs. We would only work with biotechs that are not public, although maybe that's starting to change now with all the stocks we're reviewing. But like we operate in that like the very end of this long tail, right? And then as a site, we're a little higher up on that hierarchy. And then as an independent contractor, I mean, Zymewire is obviously a tool. We'll get into all that. But like, what advice would you give to, let's say, a small CRO owner? I don't know, like myself, or a small site network owner, like myself, maybe. Like, how would I do better at biz dev?
So one of the we recently actually had some conversations. We did a series just kind of to investigate actually a very similar question. One of the surprising things was just the attitude of, are you going to sit and wait for questionnaires to drop in your inbox? Or are you going to be proactive? So advice that we would probably have is think like pre Zymewire, pre any kind of tools or anything like that. Really think about, do you want to grow your business, or are you happy with the current status quo? Because that to us is the biggest surprise. Like a lot of these sites, if they're known, they'll get the studies, and that's okay. For us, I guess from like an advice perspective is really do some soul searching and decide, do you want to grow or not? And if you want to grow, probably how are you going to carve out dedicated resources to be focused on that growth? As in, maybe it's not a great idea to get the study coordinator or the clinic nurse to be doing your BD efforts.
Right.
And so that's what we see. Like there's a lot of sites out there, but a lot of them don't necessarily have a growth mindset, and that's okay because they're getting enough to keep them busy, and it's a side hustle maybe in some cases. So that's probably I guess from an advice standpoint, it would be, think about if you really do want to grow, and if you do, how are you going to carve out dedicated time in someone's week for that growth activity before any kind of tools or any other services.
And Dan, you probably know from your own experience too. I think there's two distinct sales cycles between those top tier pharmas with the layers of procurement and other things that are the interfaces you have to go through to do business with them versus that longer tail and the smaller biotechs. You may be speaking directly with the chief medical officer. I mean, it's just a completely distinct set of sales cycles between the bigs and the long tail, and you can find a lot of productive activity and relationship, across that longer tail, depending on what therapeutic areas you operate in, and just how you choose to go about building a portfolio of some of the big guys, but a lot of the smaller ones too.
Yeah, I think those are both good points. I mean, I think us in the research industry, like site owners, CROs, basically anybody in this industry, we're so lucky right now. We saw this pandemic. I mean, in many ways, this pandemic made the industry better, and busier. I mean, I'm sure we're all feeling that. And so this is why I keep saying small is the new big. There's like a bunch of small opportunities, but when you add them all up, they make up for more than just one large opportunity, and you're more diversified when it comes to that. But what I've noticed is from the sites, because we have a consulting company and we charge a monthly retainer fee for the sites, and we help them do biz dev, we get studies for them, all these kind of things. Sites, they it's kind of like getting a loan from the bank. Like biz dev is kind of like seeking financing if you're a small business. The best time to go to the bank is when you don't need the money. And I think is the same thing is true with biz dev. Like the best time to biz dev is when you have studies, because sponsors can smell when you're desperate, right? So what they like is somebody that has studies, but is also reaching out because they're professional. They have biz dev SOPs. I mean, if somebody's reaching out to you and it looks professional, you on the other end as a sponsor assume, okay, these guys are sophisticated enough to have a biz dev team, and we assume some SOPs for how to do this. So that right there is already a selling point for you.
Yeah, and
So
Dan, the banking analogy is so perfect. You can't wait until the study's over to then start looking for it, your next study. It just,
I
yeah,
like that
absolutely.
analogy. That's gonna be a new quote.
Yeah. Pete, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, Dan, what do you see from a sales to or BD efforts towards the CROs, like as the site? What would your guidance be for a site? I'm just curious from a like how much selling should they do into PPD or Icon or somebody to try to get studies that way versus direct to the sponsor?
I think so. What I tell sites is, look, let's try to get you. There's like 5 major CROs right now because Icon and who was it? PRA just merged, right? So,
Yeah.
we went from 6 major ones to like 5 major ones, more or less. So your job is to try to get a study from each one of those and do well in that one study, because that's going to be your biz dev going forward. I mean, Scott knows. Well, I don't know if you dealt with sites, Scott, but
Sure,
I mean,
absolutely.
yeah, once you do well for a CRO, you're like their asset now, right? Like you are like their Zymewire, like that you don't want to share with other CROs. And maybe you found a diamond in the rough site, somewhere very small site. And if you're PPD, you're like, wow, we're really lucky to have this PI. So we're going to keep giving them new studies. So try to get on the 5 major CRO databases and try to get one study from each, and then spend the majority of your time LinkedIn networking with just various people from pharma and CRO, and really focus on that long tail, because that long tail, those small CROs, those small biotechs, they don't even know necessarily who the key opinion leaders are. So they don't know the difference between you or somebody who's like a superstar, at least on paper, PI. And so you're on level playing field there.
Yeah. And you're right. Now, getting in, if you can get on the databases of those large CROs, absolutely, they're seeing the majority of the business in the industry by definition. You will be busy with all of the feasibility forms and whatnot, and hopefully you can find that some of those will start to automate some of that, so you don't have to go through it every single time. But yeah, they're by definition doing most of the research.
Yep, absolutely. So I think that's the best advice. And then I guess if you can take that a step further, because sites, they typically, let's say like myself as an example, CNS. This is how I started. This is what I still do to this day. The majority of the studies my sites do are CNS. But in our site network, we have all kinds of indications. Actually, very few are CNS. So just because you get on PPD's database, let's say for a schizophrenia study, you're not on their list for like hypercholesterolemia. So that's a good start, is do really well for one CRO, but they're going to pigeonhole you in that indication and maybe like related indications. But if you're doing well at schizophrenia, it doesn't mean you're going to do well at diabetes. So you still need to do more biz dev, even if you've been successful with various CROs for certain indications, if you're trying to expand. And a lot of sites are trying to diversify their capabilities, as they should. Pete, I was telling Scott, I have all these people emailing me now like, hey, I've been a CRA for 10 years, W2. I'm fed up with like not, the glass ceiling or whatever. And I want to go out on my own because my friend's making like triple what I make and they're happier. And what happens now? That's all fine and dandy, but now this person become an entrepreneur if they actually go that route. And that means a lot of your activities got to be biz dev, a lot of it, because you may get busy now, but how do you ensure you get busy 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 24 months from now? It's through biz dev, guys. And the magic, I think, in the next decade's all in the long tail. So I think this is that was a really good point that you brought up, Scott. How would somebody even begin to look at this kind of stuff? Let's say like a small site or a small like independent contractor CRA, because I really think they're after like the same outcome.
Yeah, I think, and Pete, you can certainly follow on, but there's sort of two ways. You do it organically, and you're looking at all of the web services, from the clinical trial databases, the newsletters, the job boards yourselves, or you say, is there an aggregation service, and is the investment in that worth the trade-off of my own personal time of trying to keep up with all of those different channels myself? And with the absolute volume of data that's produced every single day, we're leveraging machine learning and artificial intelligence, coupled with human verification to try to distill that volume of data. But when we first meet up with someone, they say, "Oh, I'm doing it myself. I've got my favorite newsletters. I've got my favorite websites. They're all bookmarked.
Yeah.
And I start at like 8 a.m, and then I break for lunch. And now I've got this list." And but you can automate that, if the trade-off in your own personal time is worth the investment.
So I'm curious, has the AI reached the capability of doing like a better job as like me, the example you had, I have all my tabs open, so I'm seeing like which biotech, when they got their funding, what study, if they just got from phase 1 to phase 2, or are you saying like the AI can help me with a lot of this monotonous stuff?
Like all the information is a commodity. That's kind of our worldview, right? You get these companies saying like, oh, we have secret stuff here. If they had secret stuff, they would start a hedge fund and invest in those companies and make tons of money, right?
Right.
There are no secrets, especially with these public companies. Like, and how many hundreds of thousands of companies are public in this space? There are no secrets. So our attitude is there's no secrets. And when you kind of take that approach and you just admit that the information is a commodity, you can start to really think around, well, what does the person actually need from that information rather than just delivering it. So I think we do view the AI side of it as like it's an operational thing that our customers don't really care about it.
Yeah.
They don't care how this information got to them.
Yeah. Right.
And so I think what it's allowed us to do is punch well above our weight class as a company. We compete against a company that they're like a database provider that they have it's a kind of old school type of product, whatever, but they have a facility in India that has hundreds of people that are scouring the internet trying to update this database, right? So for us operationally, we don't need that. We don't need the 200 people or the 500 people or whatever they're bragging about, but So we can go up against a product like that and deliver a better experience and pass on the price savings to the end client. So that's kind of what the reason why I think Zymewire has been popular with sites is that we don't need to charge a price that we can actually we have to pay 500 people in a different
Yeah.
So that's kind of our view on it. Like it really is it's an operational efficiency, and I don't think our clients are buying AI, right? They're buying an outcome.
Right. And that's just proof that, technology is a deflationary force. I mean, the price of everything does come down if technology is behind it, because I mean, just look at like the cost of anything we have. Our iPhones keep getting better and the price is not really going up that much, or Samsungs or whatever. Maybe Apple's a bad example, but the when you have a driving force like technology, it's supposed to bring the price down of everything, and then the technology is supposed to get better, and then that's how that is innovation. So that's a good point.
It's our responsibility to pass on that in a way, like from we can deliver. Our goal is deliver a better experience for people at that lower. Not just do lower and crappier. It's better and lower because of what the machine learning can allow us to do, right? And that's probably the.
But Dan, I think the users experience it as time savings, as Pete said. They're not into the how it got there, but instead of them having to do it manually, it's being delivered on a in a very usable and actionable format, and that's how they experience it as time savings.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. It's kind of like if you're an Uber driver. I mean, you don't need to know how the technology works of your car, of your phone, of Uber itself. You just know that it's there. It gives you an order. You go do it. Same thing here. You're automating a process. One of the things that I think we all need to like do a better job is educating the smaller, so like the long tail of our industry, as far as sites, CROs, independent contractors, job seekers. They're not even aware of like what they need to be searching. Like when I started my CRO, I think it was Pete and like another guy who owned a CRO. They would tell me, "Hey, what you want to do is look at the funding sources on these things, because that's when they have the financing ready, and that's when you want to get in early." So like we need more education, like those kind of things for the sites, for the smaller CROs. The big CROs know this stuff already, but the smaller, right? If the future is in the long tail, and some of those players from the long tail eventually become part of the bigger market share, I think we're all better off educating and empowering the long tail as much as we can.
Well, one of the things you bring up funding. So in the webinar we did last week, we were curious. So as Scott referenced, we got we calculated at least 3,000 hours of conversations like during the pandemic, right, with our client base, and from that we kind of had a pretty good pulse on what people were wondering and feeling. And so the webinar that we did was, let's try to confirm some of these thoughts that people were having, or like hunches, I guess would be. So one of the things we looked at was the funding in 2020 compared to 2019. So any guess? Okay, I won't put you on the spot here. You're the host. So 70 billion went to U.S. companies. If you take out the large pharma, 70 billion went to just U.S. based companies. So we cover globally. Everything we do is global, but the webinar that we did was kind of focused for a U.S. audience. And so 70 billion in 2019. In 2020, that jumped to 113 billion. So during the pandemic, the funding is basically another 40 billion piled in, right?
Yeah. I believe it. I wouldn't have believed it at the time, because everybody was fearful. When uncertainty comes, your default is to be fearful. But like it wasn't long after, like maybe 3 months after shutdowns, myself and Chris, who's my business partner, were like, "Hey, these studies, they're rolling in. Like they're doing feasibilities as if fall time they're going to activate all these sites." And it turned out there was a second wave, but the money was there, the deals were there, the jobs were there. Even some people that got furloughed within 30 days, they got hired again by another company in a better job, better pay. So the money's there. We can all feel it. All of us in the industry who are on the receiving end of these funds can feel it. I mean, sites now are getting to the point where they're turning down studies. This is a good time to be a site, CRO, CRA, but it's not always that way, guys. Biz dev, we just said, the best time to get a loan from the banks when you don't need it. Same thing with biz dev, same thing with job opportunities. Your biz dev needs to be stronger during these times.
Well, and Dan, from the site's point of view, one of the graphs we had as well showed at peak patient load, the COVID trials were consuming 2,500 patients per day, 2,500 patients per day at peak COVID trial load. Now that's in steep decline right now because those were the vaccine trials. In that Q4, they spiked up, very large scale trials. And
I can share that one here. I got.
Yeah, please.
Keep going, Scott. But I'll.
Yeah, and this is where we were I was taking the position of it feels like a cliff to me because I don't think we're going to return to, with follow-on studies, with more mRNA studies, those types of things, and with variant, COVID variants. I don't think we're going to see that type of load again. But yeah, Pete's sharing it here, and this was one of my slides to sort of support the thesis of a cliff in terms of as expressed by patient load.
Sure.
And the format of the webinar, Dan, was as you remember, with I guess just for your audience, we kind of debated different points of view. So Scott and I don't see totally eye to eye on like, is there a cliff, is there not a cliff? So this was one of Scott's kind of, hey, there's going to be a cliff slides, just to give your audience some of that context. But yeah, so this was what we did was we put all the clinical studies, all the COVID studies, and we lined them up and we figured out the per day, if you assumed everything like, recruitment went on track and all that, and you said every day of the pandemic, how many patients were needed to fulfill the open studies for that day. So you take like a 30,000 patient study over 30 days needs 1,000 per day, right? So that kind of math is, so this was the shape of that curve. So at the beginning you kind of had demand around the world for 500 patients a day, every single day, through August and September. And the peak of that was really January 1st of 2021 is what Scott referenced. 2,500 new patients needed to be enrolled in COVID studies around the world. And then we're seeing it. So this was, this part is a drop. And the day of the webinar was March 25th. So obviously there's going to be additional studies coming online, but our whole take on it in the webinar was, if there were no further COVID studies, this is how that demand would taper off, based on what's out there registered.
If no further phase 3 COVID studies registered, which there will be.
There will be, but at March 25th, you still saw that decline, right?
Yeah,
it still came down from the top. So it was interesting. And then we got into like we had, so I don't know if you remember this one when you saw it. This was my favorite statement from I'll just go through. I'm again.
So if we go back to that first one, because I would argue, obviously, more people getting vaccinated. There are going to be like treatment or long-term safety studies for the vaccine for whomever didn't get vaccinated, right? Or maybe they already did. Who knows? Maybe it's like an open label registry where they can just do long-term. The demand, like I know from like the ground level, there's a demand for COVID patients. It's just harder to get them. So they're probably more in demand. So like here at the peak, like in December 1st, that's sites were so busy at that time with COVID patients. Like patients were probably calling these sites, not probably, I know for a fact, calling sites, and the sites are like, look, we don't need more COVID patients right now, and then so that contributes to like the decline a little bit.
Yeah, well, this is the pharma and biotech demand.
Oh, okay.
Right. So
if what they need. Okay.
Yeah, the visual I kind of had in my head was like you put all the sponsors in a room, and they're kind of saying every day, all right, world, we need 2,500 patients today, right? And then the site's got to deliver that to them.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's kind of the.
Yeah, because I know right now, April 2nd, 2021. there are sites, they're getting tons of COVID. I know your next slides are about the studies. It's harder to get these patients now. So pharma demand,
Yeah.
whatever it can be, reality is going to tell you a different story.
I mean,
Yeah.
the pool of people that are either vaccinated or have been exposed and had COVID is growing every single day. So any sort of exposure naive patients, that pool is shrinking. Yeah, very much.
Yep.
Yeah. Dan, did I tell you that I registered for a study? Did I tell you that?
So you joined a study? No,
Yeah,
you
I
didn't
joined a
tell me
study.
that.
It was like I've just had this curiosity
You
forever.
get a vaccine or what?
Well, I haven't yet, but so yeah, it's an interesting timing though. I'm either getting placebo or the vaccine, but
I
in
see.
Canada, you see it as like I'm seeing it as where I am, and like you realize that wow, this is going to be a hard situation soon. So this right now, my age group has not been offered a vaccine, right? So they're still doing kind of 70 and up in the area that I live in. Canada is way different story than you guys, as
Right.
you know, because there's no vaccine being made here. It's problematic for, but 70. So I'm doing the calculus on like, well, I'll probably be July before my age group 30 to 40, not able to work from home, not frontline worker. Before I get a vaccine, July is what the province that I live in estimates. So I'm like, well, yeah, sign me up for a clinical study, right? But like as soon as the vaccination line reaches the trial eligibility line, why would you go in the study route?
Right.
Is the like as a participant, but
Right.
yeah. Anyway,
Like there's
it's like
less incentive. There'd be less incentive for the participant at that point. But yeah, the demand will still be there.
yeah. So what we're seeing in some of the data, and I'm sure you're hearing this, much more away from like more studies in Latin America, right? As a result,
Yes. Yes.
so it's driving. Although there's sites here in Canada, come July, that study's not going to recruit from Canada because everyone will take the vaccine, right? And
Right.
in the U.S. even so, the study, the flow of where the studies are taking place is moving to places like Latin America or other parts that are not having that same access, that are kind of behind the wave. So
Shout out
really,
to
yeah.
shout out to Latinos in clinical research. Colombia and Mexico, you guys are gonna get strong demand, I predict.
Yeah.
We all predict
That's,
for
yeah.
studies. COVID studies.
Yep.
Yeah, COVID specifically. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Another one we're watching, Dan, that I think, I mean, your audience would, yeah, I think it's relevant to. We're watching the sentiment among the CROs for
Okay.
further COVID work. So again, when you're thinking of those, yeah, even at the CRA, looking for job opportunities or the freelancers, we're keeping a close eye on what are the CROs telling their investors about future COVID work. And so we go into some of that in the webinar, but some interesting quotes from some of the CEOs of the leading CROs that they're saying, COVID's going to be around for, like, they're quite bullish on all this the variants creating additional study work. And some of them are saying, hey, they'll be COVID forever. And, we're going to have like a certain book of business will be COVID.
Yeah. You can bank on it. I'm in that camp too. I think that will be the case. And this whole paradigm shift of the synthetic mRNA, I mean, that nobody's really talking about that. To me, that's the most amazing part of this whole thing is we just got a paradigm shift for like a new vaccines. And there's going to be studies, all kinds of studies, even beyond COVID on the synthetic mRNA.
Yeah, mRNA and Pete's data dug into that a little bit as well. But yeah, that is another after effect of the pandemic is mRNA as its own new funded research endeavor across multiple therapeutic areas as well as other vaccines.
We all made fun of the data nerds 20 years ago, 10 years ago. After COVID, we're all trying to be the data nerds. I've been telling my sites, collect as much data as you can, and they're like, well, what do you mean? We're already doing the study. No. We're the only difference between us and the site across the street is going to be what data do we have on our patient journey, who's our patient, what they eat, everything you can collect that, because that's really all you're going to have at the end of the day. So this stuff's super important. I think you guys, I'm excited to watch your company grow. We definitely have to have you both on again. Pete, for sure. Scott, absolutely need to interview you at least once, because I've interviewed Pete like twice, I think, already. And now it's like the third time. Happy 500th episode.
500.
Yeah, that's five. That is, I can't believe that, Dan. That
You guys
said
should win a
500.
prize, but I don't know what we're gonna
I
actually
think
give.
I think you
Some
you're the guy
Legos.
who's done 500 interviews. That's prizeworthy.
Amazing milestone. Wow, that's amazing.
Thank you guys. But yeah, I guess a lot more in the next 500 episodes going to be about data. I guarantee you that. And I'm not a data guy, but I'm a business guy, and I understand that to be competitive in the next decade, I have to be a data guy. And Zymewire makes it accessible for me to be a data guy, right?
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks for having us. So,
Absolutely, guys. Thank you very much. And we'll have the link to the webinar right underneath the show notes. If people want to get a hold of you, is just like that webinar link is okay.
so yeah, we've got a landing page that it's on YouTube, but we've got a landing page that if people want the data package, so we've kind of second half of the webinar is these selling tips that we've got. So one of them is actually to focus on mRNA companies because there's a halo effect.
Okay.
But we've got a data package that we're sending out. So we've got a landing page that people can go to. And then from there, yeah, they can reach out. Or obviously our homepage is always open.
That's awesome. I actually have to watch that replay myself. I don't attend these webinars, these industry webinars. Scott, you've probably attended way more than both of us. You don't get value from that. But your guys, as soon as I saw the email, I was like, dang it, I missed it. Like I only got the last 10 minutes. These are practical. These are the kind of webinars we want. We don't want the webinars on, random things that are not actually, they don't give you any tangible benefits. We want to know how to better ourselves, better our opportunities.
Yeah. We tried to make it actionable for sure.
Yeah, it's refreshing. Yeah. It's very refreshing. So thank you guys for that. Everybody make sure you go watch that. Go connect with both Scott and Pete on LinkedIn. Let them know you watched it on the 500th episode. And then thank you guys very much for coming on, and we'll definitely do it again.
Thanks, Dan.
Cool. Thanks for having us, Dan.
Thank you guys. Bye-bye.